OC. Viewer discretion is advised. Incoming transmission in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, everybody? It is Courtney here from the Outcasted OC podcast, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Before we start, I just would like to say I apologize if there is a bit of an echo in this room. I'm actually moving out of my house this weekend, and so unfortunately, the wrestling room behind me has started to be packed away. There is not as much in terms of memorabilia in here, so a lot of the sound is kind of bouncing off the walls. So I apologize if there is a bit of an echo. Unfortunately, there is not much I can do about that, but what I can do is tell you what happened on Monday Night Raw this week, so let's get into it. The Monday Night Raw this week kicked off with Bron Breakker and Ilya Dragunov both arriving to the arena. We obviously find out they will be having a match later on in the evening, and we also see Damage Control and Lyra Valkyria arriving separately to the arena. This is because they also have a match later on in the evening. But the actual Monday Night Raw starts off with Drew McIntyre arriving out to the ring, and he starts cutting a promo. But before he has the chance to say anything, he gets inundated with CM Punk chants, as he does at the moment, because you cannot have Drew McIntyre without CM Punk chants. He talks about how in 5 days at Clash at the Castle he's going to become the new World Heavyweight Champion, and how Judgment Day end up following Damian Priest around all the time, and he says he doesn't give a damn. But before he gets a chance to say anything else, El Champion, Damian Priest's music hits. And there was a moment that I caught that Pat McAfee went ahead and said, say his name and he appears, which if you do not know, that is a Joe Hendry reference. And I had mentioned on the podcast last week, and I made a TikTok about this the other day, how I want Joe Hendry at Clash at the Castle. I think it's happening. Why would Pat McAfee say that on commentary if it did not mean anything? But anyway, I'm just overthinking at this point. I'd be so excited if Joe Hendry actually came to Clash at the Castle. Anyway, Damian Priest comes out and he's like, I've given you your shot at Clash at the Castle and you're still making excuses. This was personal beforehand, but you've made it even more personal now. When it comes to the Judgment Day is not a champ. Like, the championship does not belong to the Judgment Day, it belongs to me. He also mentions how he's going to put Drew down in front of his people, and he says that he doesn't need the Judgment Day to be champion. He can very much do it on his own, which I actually believe he can. Drew's like, look, I hope that you have enjoyed your time with the title because it's going to be mine on Saturday. Damian looks at Drew and is like, look, man, give it a rest. You continue to pass blame and it's actually ridiculous at this point. He says, I'm going to set you a challenge. He says, you're going to go one-on-one with Finn tonight. If Finn wins, the Judgment Day will be at ringside. But if you win, Judgment Day will be barred from ringside at Clash at the Castle. Drew's like, I respect a man who is willing to dig his own grave. Let's go ahead and do that. So that is the main event that we will be getting later on this evening. We got to see the recap of what has been happening with Liv Morgan and Dom Mysterio from last week, and there is a moment where Dom walks into the Judgment Day clubhouse, and Liv Morgan is kind of sprawled out on a chair as if she owns the place, and Dom's like, what are you doing here? Like, you need to leave, blah, blah, blah. And Liv basically tries to give Dom her hotel key. Now, if I was Dom Mysterio, I would not be taking that hotel key because I don't need it. I know there are some people that would love, Liv Morgan to give them the hotel key, but unfortunately, not my kind of vibe. To see the National Puerto Rican Day Parade, now this was obviously because Zelina Vega and Damian Priest are both Puerto Rican, and obviously they attended the parade on behalf of WWE the night before Monday Night Raw, so that was kind of cool to see that. This match of the night we have is actually a rematch from Queen of the Ring. Now this is Io Sky taking on Lyra Valkyria. This has obviously come about because Io's kind of become a little bit more unraveled since losing to Lyra Valkyria when it comes to the Queen of the Ring tournament, and so basically she initiated this match last week by beating down on Lyra last week when she was having a backstage segment. So from the beginning of this match, Lyra looks like she is on the attack. She gets a really hot start, but then we end up seeing Io end up brutalizing Lyra. Lyra hits a really nice suplex bridge onto Io, and then she hits a really nice unique submission move as well, but then Io ends up getting the upper hand and hits a really nice moonsault and takes over during the match. We hit the commercial break, but when we come back, Lyra's on top hitting a really nice missile dropkick onto Io as well. Io ends up turning things around though, and there's a moment where Lyra goes for the Nightwing, but then because Damage Control are ringside, Dakota ends up ruining it so that Lyra does not get that 3 count. Lyra ends up going for Kari and Dakota, obviously because they capitalized off of being ringside and were able to help out Io. Lyra goes for the Nightwing, but then we end up seeing Io hit this really weird move where she's like shaking the hair of Lyra to stop her, to take away the concentration, and then she ends up capitalizing on this, so she gets the win. But then we end up seeing Io continue to beat down on Lyra Valkyria Valkyria after the match, and Caden Carter and Katana Chance end up making the save for Lyra, and we see Damage Control just retreating out of the ring. We have a lot of backstage movements after this match, so I'm quickly just going to go through them. So we have Finn, JD, and Carlito coming into the clubhouse. They see if Dom's okay, but then Dom ends up telling them about the hotel key, and obviously they're all really confused, like, what do we do? Then we see that Bianca and Jade are backstage. Now obviously there is going to be a women's tag match that they are sitting ringside for later on in the evening, and then we see the Alpha Academy, and we obviously see a recap of what happened last week. There's a moment where Miz can't find Truth, but then he ends up running into Sami Zayn, and then Sami ends up running into Maxine and Akira, and he apologizes for what happened last week. Otis comes in, and Otis basically says to Sami that he does not feel like he is himself without Chad Gable. He feels like he is nothing without him. And then we end up going back to the Judgment Day clubhouse where Finn, JD, and Damien are all there. They're talking about how Liv is distracting all of them, and obviously still talking about the hotel key. This is a massive part of the episode, unfortunately. I kind of wish I actually got to speak more about wrestling and less about a women's hotel key. And I'm sorry if that sounds a little bit harsh, but I just don't like that kind of thing with my wrestling. The last thing I want is to come home from work, sit down to watch wrestling to escape, and basically have somebody being taunted with a hotel key for that kind of thing. It's just not my vibe. But anyway, what was more my vibe is we got to see a recap of what happened at NXT Battleground last night, and obviously we got to see Kalani Jordan become the first NXT Women's North American Champion, and we had a really awesome video package coming in for Ludwig Kaiser as well too, him talking about how he ended up beating Sheamus last week and how he wants to go for Money in the Bank. I would not be opposed to this. I would love to see it. I feel like that could be really cool. We head back to the ring where we have our next match, which is Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, and Braun Strowman taking on the Judgment Day, so Dom Mysterio, JD McDonough, and Carlito. Carlito and Braun start off this match, but then we end up seeing Rey get into the ring super quickly, and he ends up taking JD McDonough to the ropes. We end up seeing Dom grabbing Dragon Lee, and then we end up seeing Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio double teaming throughout the match as well. Carlito ends up taking out Rey, and then the Judgment Day end up stopping Braun from getting tagged into the match. Dragon Lee uses his quickness in this match on Carlito, and there's a moment where Liv Morgan tries to stand on the ring apron and get involved in the match, but then we end up seeing Zelina getting involved, and she pushes Liv, but then ends up pushing Liv onto Dom in a very sexually suggestive way, which, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of this kind of storyline. Moment where Zelina and Liv end up going at it as well. Then we have the Strowman Express, obviously, and then the team of Rey, Dragon, and Braun secure the win. Like I said, I really liked this. I didn't like the Liv Morgan aspect, but I'm assuming I just now have to kind of get used to her being around a little bit more often. A little bit more backstage movements, so let's go through them. So we had a video package for Ilya Dragunov, and then Ilya is backstage warming up for his match against Braun, and then he ends up running into Ricochet. They kind of have a bit of an exchange back and forth. Sami Zayn is walking backstage, and then we see Damage Control are obviously backstage after EO's match, and Dakota's trying to figure out what's going on with EO. She's like, hey, like, are you all good? And there's a moment where we just see EO snap, and she just goes, Damage Control has to change, and I'm like, sweet as, that's cool. I'm a little scared, but it's fine. Sami Zayn makes his way out to the ring to cut a promo before his match, and he starts talking about how he's had a messed up couple of weeks and how when it comes to Clash at the Castle this weekend with Chad, he just wants to put everything to rest. He said it started off really personal, and obviously on Saturday I'm going to go ahead and defeat Chad Gable, and I want to put an end to this. Chad comes out with the Alpha Academy, and he said this is typical Sami Zayn trying to tear everything down that I have built. We're good. The Alpha Academy's fine. You don't need to worry about us. Everything's all good. And Sammy's like, are you out of your mind, man? And turns around. He's like, turn around. Like, obviously everybody is not okay. And he said, look, Chad doesn't care about you guys. If anything, everybody else in this arena cares more about you than Chad does. And he said that you won't be happy until you guys actually leave the Alpha Academy. And then Chad responds with, well, families stick together no matter what. And I'm going to unleash the most brutal version of Otis onto you tonight. So then we have a commercial break. But when we come back, we have the match between Sammy and Otis. Now, there's a moment where this match kind of starts off a little bit slow and then it picks up pace, but then it's a very quick match. So we have Chad Gable ringside, and he's trying to instruct Otis during this match, kind of like a mentee mentor, but it's more in a manipulative kind of way. So Otis is obeying Chad's orders during the match. Chad ends up accidentally distracting Otis, and then we see Sammy capitalize on this and hits a Helluva Kick to secure the win. Then Chad ends up attacking Sammy, and then this just kind of, It's a little bit messy and chaotic how this happens, so I'm just going to run through it very slowly. So Chad attacks Sammy after the match, and then we end up seeing Chad slapping Otis because he's trying to be like, I need you to get this aggression out, like you need to beat down on him too. And then Otis ends up going after Sammy, and there's a moment where Otis actually ends up putting Chad in the corner of the ring, and Chad looks really scared, but then Otis can't bring himself to attack him, and then he ends up retreating and leaving. There's a moment where Miz backstage is still looking for Truth. He ends up running to R-Truth, and Truth is talking about how he was doing some fortunes or something with somebody. Turns out it was Scarlett, and they've basically set up a tag match against Truth and Miz with AOP tonight. Truth just doesn't know what he's up to these days. Back to the ring where Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair make their entrance out, and they are going to be sitting ringside for this match. So it's Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark taking on the team of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. Now all three of these teams will be participating in the Women's Tag Team Championships at Clash at the Castle this weekend. So this is kind of in preparation for that. So Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are obviously like really excited to be in this match. Obviously, I'm excited to see them too. So much so to the point where Isla Dawn ends up going for Shayna Baszler's knee. Now, it's referenced on commentary. How is Shayna still doing this? She literally had an NXT Battleground Underground match last night. I don't know how she did it, but she did the damn thing. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn looked great in ring-wise and also with their gear as well too. They were on fire. There's a moment where Zoe ends up realizing that she's actually on her own because Shayna got taken out very early on, but then Shayna ends up finding a second gear. She comes in hot. She ends up slamming Alba into the ring steps, and then she ends up submitting Alba Fire as well too. So Zoe and Shayna get the win. I don't know how this is going to impact the match that they have at Clash, but I'm excited to see all three of these teams go at it nonetheless. We get a video package for Braun Breaker now. Obviously, he's about to have a match with Ilya Dragunov, but we kind of get to see a little bit of the carnage that he has been causing on the main roster since his call-up, and we obviously get to see why this has happened, and it's all stemming from the fact that Adam Pearce did not put him in the King of the Ring tournament. But anyway, we had the match between Braun and Ilya. Now, this is very similar to matches that we have had from them in the past. If you know both of their in-ring styles, obviously, you might kind of get a template as to what we are to expect in this match. But throw that template out, because this match, I would highly consider you watch it. It easily was match of the night for me. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. So Ilya and Braun are exchanging blows from the beginning, and then we end up seeing a pop-up enziguri come through by Ilya Dragunov. I wrote down on my notes, which I'm kind of confused why I wrote this, but I wrote Ilya takes Braun to Chop Town. I don't know why. I think he's just hitting a whole bunch of chops. But then Braun ends up picking up the momentum, and then we hit a commercial break. But when we come back, both men are going at it, and then we end up seeing Ilya hit the Constantine special. He hits two really nice suplexes and then follows this off with a bridge cover. And then he hits a coast-to-coast and a senton bomb, hits a 2 count on Braun. Braun ends up finding his feet. He hits a spear. Then we see the H-bomb come in. Braun ends up throwing Ilya ribs first into the commentary table and into the barricade as well too. Braun ends up ripping Ilya apart and secures the win. Then there's a moment where it looks like Braun is going to be beating up on Ilya outside of the ring, but then we end up seeing Ricochet intercepting and saving Ilya after the match. We go back to the Judgment Day clubhouse where Damian Priest is telling the Judgment Day that we need to get back into control of what is going on. We need people to fear us again, and we need to get back to business, and that Dom needs to stop this whole entire Liv Morgan thing. Then we see Drew McIntyre and Sheamus are backstage, and obviously Sheamus is trying to hype up Drew for his match tonight and also for Clash at the Castle. And then Sheamus talks about how he wants to win Money in the Bank, but Drew's like, I'll be World Heavyweight Champion, so just make sure you let me know if you're going to cash in on me. And if it ends up being us both in the ring together, we can have banger after banger after banger. We head back to the ring where we have the match between Awesome Truth and AOP. Now, AOP start off very dominant, very strong. We hit the commercial break, but when we come back, R-Truth obviously starts to save the match in his own opinion. And then we see Karrion and Scarlett both trying to distract, and then New Day comes in to interfere against them both, and then Truth ends up hitting one of the members of AOP with a title, and then Miz does a roll-up to secure the win. I don't really like how the Final Testament has been built up so much so to the point where they get taken the mickey out of by a joking tag team, if that makes sense. I don't know sometimes. I really don't know what's going on. We got to see a video recap of what happened between Bron and Ilya and Ricochet, and then there's a moment where Ricochet is trying to help Ilya out backstage. He's trying to help him to medical. Bron ends up getting involved and grabs Ricochet. They both end up fighting in the parking lot, and then Bron ends up throwing Ricochet into the truck, and then he ends up picking up Ricochet, walking up a ladder and just slamming him kind of like a KOD style onto a car. And I started bawling my eyes out because I was like, why? Like, why are you going to do this to me? And then there's the moment where we end up going to a commercial break, but when we come back, Ricochet ends up getting put on a stretcher, put into an ambulance. Samantha Irvin is watching from inside the arena. She ends up going backstage, goes into the ambulance with him, and this is how I think they've written Ricochet off TV, which is really sad. I really like Ricochet, and I'm really torn by this entire thing. I know that they're writing him off to potentially have him run out his contract, but I kind of wish it didn't get to this point. I kind of wish that Ricochet was treated a little bit better. I feel as though he fell victim to being booked one way in NXT by Triple H. Which was amazing. He did really great stuff in NXT. And then the inconsistencies of booking from NXT to main roster in terms of the transition, different people running it. I feel like he was a victim of the Vince McMahon booking saga. And once you're down that rabbit hole, you can't get out. No matter how much you try. I feel like Triple H was doing his absolute best to book Ricochet as well as he could. But unfortunately, I think the damage had been done at that point. And it's a real shame because Ricochet is a phenomenal talent. Like, sure, you can pick apart anything in terms of his performance, but people are always going to need to improve. And I just, if Ricochet does end up leaving WWE, sorry, I was just checking my microphone was still going on. If Ricochet does end up leaving WWE, I want to thank him for everything he's done. And at the end of the day, I just want him to be happy. And if that's in a different company where he feels as though he'll get to do what he wants, then that's all as a wrestling fan that we want, is we want our favorite wrestlers to be happy and thriving and doing what they love and, supporting their families. So I guess we'll have to see where this goes, but this kind of angle just very much struck me as the way that they write people off TV. So, yeah. We head back to the ring where we have the main event match. Now, this is Drew McIntyre taking on Finn Balor. Now, the stipulation is if Drew wins, the Judgment Day is barred from ringside. If Finn wins, the Judgment Day will be at ringside at Clash at the Castle. So they both start working each other on the floor, and then Finn Balor ends up getting the upper hand on Drew McIntyre outside of the ring. But then Drew ends up taking over, and he hits a really nice belly-to-belly on Finn Balor over the commentary table, and then we hit the commercial break. But when we come back, Finn Balor hits a really nice side Russian leg sweep. We see a really nice sit-out powerbomb coming through by Drew, and then Drew ends up building up momentum, hits a neck breaker and a kip-up combo. Finn hits a couple of sling blades. We see Drew with a future shock DDT, and then Damian Priest ends up walking down the entrance ramp, and he ends up distracting Drew. So Carlito and JD end up coming in trying to distract as well too. But then we end up seeing Finn and Drew exchanging finishes. Drew hits a Claymore to secure the win, which means that the Judgment Day will be barred from ringside during the Clash at the Castle match, which, as Damien said earlier on in the night, he does not need the Judgment Day to help him win the match. I'm really looking forward to this match at Clash at the Castle. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like something really cool is going to happen in my mind, which I'm obviously going to save for the predictions podcast because I don't want to give you guys all of my juicy gossip right now. And that brings us to the end of the Monday Night Raw review for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and like the video. While you're there, go ahead and comment something that you enjoyed about Monday Night Raw this week and how you're feeling about the Clash at the Castle build. While you're there, you should go ahead and subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell icon. If you do that, you will not miss any of our reviews or our podcasts. You'll be notified straight away when we're going live and when videos have been posted. While you're there as well too, go ahead and check out the description. You can find all of the links for Outcasted OC on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as all of our personal social medias, so you can keep up to date with what we're doing when we're not posting on the channel. As always, you've got your regularly scheduled NXT review coming in from Reese this Wednesday, as well as on Thursday we will be doing our Clash at the Castle predictions. I'm really looking forward to that. I feel like those are going to be some really spicy predictions. As well as on Friday, you have the SmackDown review coming in. Now that's the SmackDown before Clash at the Castle, and I feel like that is going to be very interesting as well too. So if you don't want to miss any of that, go ahead and subscribe and stay tuned for all of this content coming out this week because I'm really looking forward to it. I'll see you guys in the podcast this week. Bye guys.